You think you're safe when you lock your door. You think you're safe when you run away. But what if the stalker wants you to run? What if they plant a tiny, invisible tracker on your car and use your own phone to lure you to the place they plan to kill you? This is the true story of two sisters who were hunted by a digital leash, and what happened when he followed them home. The woods have always been a place of deceptive peace. They offer a quiet escape, a natural wall between you and the noise of the world. For sisters Amber and Ashley, that wall was supposed to be their sanctuary. They had left the city behind, seeking solace in the deep, silent forests of rural America. Their cabin was a fortress of solitude, a place where the only sounds were the wind in the trees and the crackle of a fire. But they were about to learn that the most remote places can become the most terrifying hunting grounds. The isolation they craved was exactly what their stalker was counting on. It began subtly, with a feeling, the unnerving sense of being watched, a shadow that flickered at the edge of their vision, gone before they could be sure it was there. They dismissed it as paranoia, the city's lingering anxiety seeping into their peaceful retreat. But then, things escalated. A dead animal left on their doorstep. A single, muddy footprint on the porch that belonged to neither of them. The feeling of being watched intensified, becoming a suffocating certainty. They weren't just paranoid, they were being hunted. The forest was no longer a refuge. It was a cage, and the bars were the miles of trees separating them from help. They decided to run. Packing their bags in a frenzy, they threw everything into their car and fled, not looking back. The plan was simple: get to the nearest city, lose themselves in the crowds, and disappear. As they drove, the miles stretching between them and the cabin, a sense of relief washed over them. They were safe. They had escaped. But their relief was premature, because the hunter didn't need to chase them. He had already laid his trap. Hours later, deep in the night, Amber's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. A distorted voice, low and gravelly, spoke a single, chilling phrase, "I see you." Then the line went dead. Panic set in again. How could he see them? They were hundreds of miles away, on a dark, deserted highway. Ashley grabbed her own phone, her fingers fumbling as she tried to call the police. But there was no signal. They were in a dead zone, utterly alone. That's when they saw it. Headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, gaining on them fast. A large, dark truck, its engine roaring, filled their entire view. It slammed into their bumper, sending the car skidding across the asphalt. They were forced off the road, their car crashing into a ditch. The truck screeched to a halt behind them. Two doors slammed shut. Figures emerged from the darkness, their faces obscured by the glare of their own headlights. The sisters didn't wait. They scrambled out of the wrecked car and ran. They ran with the pure, fight-or-flight adrenaline of victims. They plunged into the unfamiliar woods bordering the highway, branches scratching their faces, their lungs burning. They could hear the heavy footsteps behind them, crashing through the underbrush, getting closer. The hunt was on again, but this time, there was nowhere to hide. They ran until they couldn't run anymore, collapsing behind a thicket of bushes. Peeking through the leaves, they saw him. A man, tall and broad, scanning the darkness. He crouched down, out of sight. The woods fell silent. The sisters held their breath, listening for any sound, any sign of his location. The silence was more terrifying than the chase. It was a silence filled with anticipation, the kind that precedes a predator's final strike. They knew he was out there, waiting, watching, and they knew he wouldn't give up. After what felt like an eternity, they heard the truck's engine start and fade into the distance. They were alone again. Shaken but alive, they made their way back to the highway. By morning, a passing driver found them and called for help. At the police station, they recounted their terrifying ordeal. The officers were sympathetic but skeptical. A random attack? A prank gone wrong? There was no evidence, no suspect, just a frantic story from two traumatized women. It was during the routine inspection of their damaged car that the truth was discovered. Tucked away in the rear wheel well, caked in mud, was a small, white disc, an Apple AirTag. The officer who found it knew exactly what it was. This wasn't a random attack. This was a calculated hunt. The stalker had planted the tracker on their car back at the cabin. He had watched them leave. He had followed their every move on his phone, a digital leash that led him right to them. He chose the moment to strike, in the dead of night, in a place with no cell service. He hadn't chased them. He had herded them like prey. The The discovery sent a fresh wave of terror through the sisters. This wasn't just a madman in the woods. This was someone intelligent, patient, and technologically savvy. The police went back to the cabin. What they found there turned the story from terrifying to truly grotesque. Inside the empty home, sitting in the center of the living room floor, was a severed deer head. Its dead eyes seemed to stare into their souls. It was a message, a promise. The hunt wasn't over. The investigation hit a wall. The AirTag was untraceable, purchased with cash. The distorted voice on the phone call couldn't be identified. There were no witnesses on that lonely stretch of highway. The stalker, or stalkers, had vanished as completely as they had appeared, leaving behind only fear and unanswered questions. Amber and Ashley were left in a state of permanent dread, knowing that someone out there knew their faces, knew their fears, and had the means to find them wherever they went. The most terrifying part of this story isn't the chase through the woods or the crash on the highway. It's the silence that followed, the complete and total absence of resolution. The hunters were never caught. They were never identified. For Amber and Ashley, the world became a prison. Every unknown number, every pair of headlights in the rearview mirror, every rustle in the trees is a potential threat. They live with the chilling, verifiable knowledge that the predator is still out there, possibly hunting in the very isolation we all seek for comfort. The ultimate horror is not knowing if, or when, he will decide to finish the hunt. The story has no end. If these true stories left you shaken, it's because the threat is real and often invisible. Hit the subscribe button now and click the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the darkest corners of true crime. And before you go, tell us in the comments, which of these chilling cases left you the most afraid of your own neighborhood? If you have a story that needs to be heard, let us know.